Critical Assignment Gait Development by Patrick Rivera. Overview: Theories and principles related to each state of development. Identify common gait abnormalities, physical and perceptual constraints at each stage of development. Early childhood stage of gait. Early childhood. To keep an upright posture, toddlers beginning to walk must first have strength in their trunk and exterior muscles. Toddlers must get the strength to stand on one leg, as they often put their feet flat on the ground, which leads to them not spending enough time on each leg when they clear their foot to take their next step. They must be able to maintain their balance while shifting their weight alternatively from one leg to the other, which physical play and exercise can help do. Gait abnormalities, early childhood. To increase stability, they walk with a broad base of support. This reduces mobility due to the instability of the child. With most infants in this stage, you will see the infant's arm raised in a guarded manner. That is so that if they fall, they can catch themselves. They are unable to rotate their trunk in a rhythmical, rhythmic manner, limits the range of motion, and prevents a full stride from happening. Every move or step they take is one motion because they place their full body weight in each step they take. This creates an irregular, waddling gait. They may pause to re-establish balance between each step. In this stage, the steps they take are much shorter, so they use less hip and knee flexion. Possible constraints, both physical and perceptual, at early childhood. Beginners may experience physical limitations due to lack of strength or balance necessary for an appropriate walking pattern. They are limited since they are accustomed to 4 points of support for movement and must learn to move with just two. Childhood stage of gait. Childhood. Now that children have better balance than they did while they were growing into their gait, they have a narrower base of support. Hip rotation and forceful step linkages are both used more frequently. We start to see the initial contact, which we hadn't seen before, and they start to heel strike and dorsiflex enough to obtain the heel strike. Children first achieve a gait pattern that is closer to normal, after which they are able to change directions more easily. Gait abnormalities, childhood. Tippy toe walking is a typical walking gait anomaly seen at this stage of development. Irregular motion control programming is the root cause and is often corrected as development progresses. Physical Possible constraints, both physical and perceptual, at childhood. Because of neurological restrictions, each step improves spatial awareness and coordination. Better support is possible due to physical limitations from the stance phase to the loading phase. Learning how objects like growing feet interact with the floor is constrained by the continually changing physical development and size. As a toddler grows, their idea of what they can walk beneath changes. Adult stage of gait. Adulthood. When we are adults, we have mastered the stance and swing phase, and we have excellent initial heel strike and dorsiflexion contact. To meet the requirements of the swing and stance basis, we have excellent hip flexion and appropriate knee flexion and extension. Gait abnormalities, adulthood. Poor repetition of poor movement patterns over time can produce muscular asymmetry, which can lead to abnormalities in walking, including poor hip extension during the propulsion phase. Possible constraints, both physical and perceptual, at adulthood. Adults who are physically active are at a time where their ability, balance, and rhythm are at their highest levels. Adults who are inactive at this time may put on additional weight that may negatively impact their walking pattern and overall health. Older adulthood stage of gaits. Older adulthood. When we reach adulthood, we kind of regress. We gain the wide base back and we shorten our strides. We also need our arms to support us again. Due to the decreased hip range of motion, we have less knee flexion and extension. Additionally, we rarely see a dorsiflexion or a plantar flexion movement. Because the arms are in the low guard and don't typically swing, we won't see the initial contact or heel strike at the start of the action or the push off at the conclusion in order to build momentum and flex that is sufficiently to obtain a nice swing phase. Gait abnormalities, older adulthood. An analogous gait is a typical irregularly seen in older adults. You can see that in the older adult may limp. This may be due to arthritis or may be too painful for them to walk correctly. Possible constraints, both physical and perceptual, at older adulthood. Osteoarthritis and osteoporosis, regenerative diseases that affect the older adult population, and they are known as structural constraints. As you get older, you will have reduced strength and balance and will most likely have a fear of falling. That is known as a functional constraint. As responses from sensory receptors deteriorate, a decline in neurological ability might result in perceptual restrictions.